Kickoff Friday morning.
Men and women will be competing together here. The bottom 20 women in the overall standings and the bottom 20 men in lanes 1 through 10. Stair Kaya, keep an eye on her. She did very well in the run portion of event 2 yesterday. Danny Spiegel will be starting in lane 13. She's an athlete who's really going to have to make some money on the heavier implements in this event.
And the implements will make a big difference. Say you can get a minute to 2 minutes on the pig flip itself. You can also gain some of that time on the back end as well.
On the men's side, in lane number 10 is Travis Mayer. He actually competed in the Burden Run in 2013, finished 21st in that event. Brent Fikowski in lane 14 really needs to score some points here to get himself inside the top 20.
It's really hard to say this on day 3 of a 5-day event or competition, but this is do or die for Brent Fikowski.
We start with the pig flip, up and back, 10 flips down, 10 flips back. Let's bring in Chris Hinshaw now. Chris, thanks so much for being here. And we were talking about this earlier as we were just sort of chatting about this event, but this pig flip can either help or hurt you depending on what kind of runner you are.
That's absolutely correct. This pig flip is a very heavy implement, and ultimately that fatigue is going to carry you into the run. And so these strength athletes that are really going to dominate on flipping this pig, unfortunately, they're going to be at the disadvantage when it comes to this run. I actually had an opportunity to speak with Jason Kalipa last night. He was in Africa talking about this event and this new format, and he said this completely changes the game. By putting this pig first, it's completely different than what it was done before. And I asked him, I said, who do you think this event favors? A strength-based athlete or the endurance runner-based athlete? And he said that it's going to feature the runner. The runner really has an opportunity because it's 3.5 miles. And in 2013, it was only 2.1 miles. And he knows the difference between 2.1 and 3.5. That's a lot of time.
Danny Spiegel for the women has already made the turn on her pig flip. She's in the upper left-hand part of the screen, just left the view there. Brent Fikowski, who's in the middle of your screen, is also towards the front for the men. The dimensions on the pig in the bottom left-hand part of your screen, 510 pounds for the men and 350 pounds for the women.
You know, Brent has success out here with more long endurance events. Obviously, his performance in run, swim, run back in 2017. But for Brent, sitting in this position on the leaderboard at 28th after 4 events in the last 2 days, like we said before, Brent has to start getting top 5 at minimum finishes if he wants to get himself back into contention.
Brent Fikowski is out there in the front along with Tudor Magda is there as well. And there goes, I think that's Ellie Turner, who is running out of the stadium. Brent Fikowski is behind her. It looks like Travis Mayer as well.
I want you guys to take a look at their backs, that low back. That obviously created a lot of low back fatigue. And in the movement of running, that core stability is really important. So in these first initial steps, they've got to settle. They've got to find a way to get that core stability so the upper body actually works with the lower body.
And Travis Mayer in front of Brent Fikowski. In the run here, they'll do 1 loop in reverse around the bike course. It's only 1, so they don't have to count their laps, thank goodness. And it's Ellie Turner out front.
And with this reverse course, they actually are going to have a bit more of an uphill climb at the very beginning part of this. I was talking to Matt Torres, and the plan was to get through the pigs pretty consistently and to take the first 800 easy, really to let their legs kind of get used to the run and flush out the pig flips. But when you have that uphill turn right off the bat, I don't feel like there's just not a whole lot of room to recover going from pig flips to that slight incline on the run.
What's nice, though, about that uphill is it's going to force them to have a shorter step length. And what you'll see is after that heavy lift, there's a lot of tension in the upper body. You'll see the shoulders start rising higher up towards the head. And when they start carrying that way, unfortunately, the stride length shrinks. So what they need to do during this opening portion as they're running now is to relax that upper body so that the stride can open up. When they hit that trail, they better be ready to run, because that place is where the time is going to make the difference between one athlete and another. They've got to go by that point.
So some athletes finishing up their pig flips. As Travis Mayer leads for the men, it's Ellie Turner leading for the women. Brent Fikowski was also one of the first men out onto the run. We saw Guy Mayeros. I believe Carolyn Prevost for the women also head out on the course. There's Adrian Bosman, competition director, who will be leading the athletes on a bike. There's Brent Fikowski just coming into the view. A 3-mile run from the North Park to the Capitol.
It looks hot out there, but just a few minutes ago it was 68 degrees, and in the running community, the ideal running temperature is really close to 60. So we're not looking at really heavy temperatures at this moment.
This event, no joke, we're kicking things off here on a Friday.
So early on here, past the 5.5-minute mark of event number 5, the Capitol. We are through the pig flip. We are in the opening stages of the 3.5-mile run to the state capitol, and that's where things are going to get interesting with the Jerry bag carry and the Husafeld bag carry to close things out. There's Travis Mayer, 21st overall after 4 events. Mentioned earlier, he did the burden run in 2013. And finished 21st.
Yes, yeah, 21's the magic number for Travis at the moment, but you know he's definitely want to get above that. And, you know, Travis is one of those athletes, he's just so underrated with his consistency over the years. A lot like Turi Helgadottir, right? You don't realize how many times they have been to the CrossFit Games.
Making his 8th appearance as Travis Mayer, and he's finished 12th 3 times, including last year. Has yet to win an event in his career. Best finish was 2nd place in the assault banger back in 2017.
I was speaking to a lot. I was speaking to a lot of athletes today and yesterday about this event, and what they're excited about is the fans. That fan experience is going to be big for them. That's going to take away some of the pain, some of the anguish that they experience.
And one thing I saw this morning is a lot of fans, either at the hotel we were staying at, is they were all talking about going to the Capitol, trying to get there early. So the fans that we have out here is one thing, which is exciting through the RV park and the dog park. But what I'm anticipating awaiting them once they get to the Capitol, that, you know, that 400-meter straightaway to the finish line, I think, Chris, as you said, is there should be just a resurgence of energy when they get to the crowd.
Ellie Turner is your leader for the women. Behind her, Alex Vigneault and Guillaume Briand have now passed Brent Fikowski.
So I want you to look at Ellie Turner. I mean, she's really looking solid here. She's very relaxed. A lot of people ask me, like, what do you mean by settling? Settling, what are you talking about? And what you're really trying to do is settle the rhythm that you run at. What is your natural rhythm? And part of that rhythm is the cadence of your breath. You've got to develop a reliable, predictable, consistent breathing rhythm. And that's what you're trying to do. That's the whole objective. Once you get control of the breath, meaning it's stable, the rest of the body can lock it in.
Top 3 for the men, Travis Mayer, Alex Vigneault, and Guillaume Briand. And for the women, it's Ellie Turner all by herself right now.
So look at that nice little V in his shoulders. It drops down, right? His shoulders are relaxed. Like he's now, his upper body, and look at that, shaking it out. Like he's very aware of keeping that tension out of his upper body, because as soon as you see tension in that upper body, that is a sign that athlete is suffering. And suffering, their stride length is not going to become natural. It's going to be something that they've never run at before, and their performance will continue to decline. So you've got to keep that upper body relaxed. So that nice V dropping from the neck is what we're looking for.
Travis Mayer is almost done with that loop around the bike course. Now he's going to make the turn to head towards the Capitol.
There's a guy that's in control. He just passed, and Chase, you mentioned this a couple of times the other day. You always want to be strategic in your look back. You always want to do it on the turn because the person behind you sees you look back. And if you do it on a straight, that means you're failing, you're weak. You want to do it strategically on a turn. He's so confident he's not even looking.
That one, I see just a little bit of a change in just where his foot striking is from the first 800 coming off the pig flip, where I feel like he was a bit more heavy-footed in the heel going up the hill, but I feel like it looks like he's shifted his weight more towards that midfoot position. And I just see that as like someone's legs that got to recover a little bit. Now he's in a more comfortable position to open up his stride.
That's a great observation. I agree with you. So that pig flip, let's face it, it's posterior chain. You're going to create a lot of damage in your hamstrings. They're going to be fatigued. Well, when you land on that heel, the first muscle group that's going to be activated is your hamstring. Likewise, if you switch to the landing on the ball of the foot, then you're going to do more quad activation. So in this event, you've got to be aware. You've got to be aware of how you're manipulating your foot strike because of what's coming.
You saw the lead that Travis Mayer has started to build here as he heads out towards the Capitol. A lifestyle that pushes you forward requires a ring that won't hold you back. Shop Kalo, the official ring of the 2022 Noble CrossFit Games.
Now this backstretch for Travis this is when we start getting to actual familiar territory for athletes that have been competing here in Madison over the last couple of years. This is the same path they've taken to the boat dock, which is at the lake. We've seen that for run, swim, run. We've seen the same path for Madison Triplus. So they got to run the bike course, so there's some familiarity there. This trail they've run multiple times in the past. So if you have experience here at the CrossFit Games here in Madison, knowing where you're going is a huge advantage as far as a distance of 3.5 miles for the athletes that really don't know the course.
A little bit of a rough start for Travis Mayer through the first 4 events, has yet to crack the top 10, hoping to do that here in event number 5.
So I'm looking at how many steps is he taking per minute. Right now he's somewhere around 160 steps. For Travis, he's a good runner. He typically will average somewhere around 170 to 180 steps in a minute. So he's still carrying some fatigue. The question is, what's going to happen as he progresses towards the Capitol? Does he settle into his natural running cadence? Or maybe the damage from all the events that he's done in the past 2 days is actually what he's feeling now.
And you think about what they went through is 10 miles of hard biking for 5-mile clips at a time. Yesterday's event that was really supposed to be on day 1 with the 4, 6, and 800 meter shuttle runs. A lot of different really fatigue elements on a lot of these athletes' legs.
That is a scary sight that you can actually see the Capitol. And I don't know about anybody, but when you look at out in the distance what a mile is, let alone 3.5, it's a monumental distance. It's like, I'm never going to get there, ever. And the key is that don't stop, move.
Travis Mayer, your leader for the men. Behind him, the last time we checked in, were Guillaume Briand and Alex Vigneault, and Ellie Turner was in the lead for the women.
See Travis shaking his arms out intermittently, and a lot of that fatigue is really coming from the pig. All right, we said it's a big posterior move, but really there's a lot of upper body taxing coming to that. And when you're running in that position, right, shoulders relax is one thing, but in that elbow bent position, it does add up a little bit. And so that shakeout just kind of helps get some of that muscle fatigue, some of that lactic acid out of the biceps, which we will need at the back half of this event with the jug carries and that Husafell back carry.
Now this is an open course. You just saw a biker pass Travis Mayer. So you're going to have to deal with people who are out for a Friday morning stroll or jog or bike right now.
And that's the benefit of being out in front by yourself, is that you really have the road to yourself, and not just the front and back, but that lateral way. When you start getting piled up towards the back end, It makes passing difficult and having to navigate just the, it's like you said, it's an open trail. There'll be people out here.
The best part about CrossFit is that you have to worry about who's in front of you as well as who's behind you. And what he's doing is he's separating himself so far that, look, you can't even tell who's behind him. Meaning the person who is in second place right now is not even thinking about him because he's not in sight. It's not a person who I can go after and chase, which means that's going to give him a huge opportunity to even create a greater gap. That's an advantage.
There is no one in sight of Travis Mayer right now. Again, it was Ellie Turner who was in the lead for the women, and then behind Travis Mayer, way back there someplace, Alex Vigneault and Guillaume Briand were pretty close for second place.
And Chris, you're talking about advantages of just line of sight for the second athlete. In the beginning, like in the beginning portion of it, there's so many tight turns where you just can't see anything, but you got to hope there's a long stretch here. One thing for athletes, I think, you see this a lot with triathletes before an event, like they'll go drive the bike course. So they have some like landmarks to designate distances. And this course has been available, at least on a map, so to speak, of where things could possibly be mapped out. And that's one of those things as maybe an athlete or maybe a coach is like, okay, where can we walk this course the day before we get here? Can we see and plant little distant landmarks on the course to kind of help guide the intensity throughout the race?
Yeah, it's like in the sport of triathlons, like Ironman in Hawaii. On the run, the 8 stations are a mile apart. And so what you always think about is just get to the next one. And then once you get there, it's just get to the next one. And pretty soon, after 26 of them, you're done. The hard part here is that you're going to come around this corner and you're going to see that Capitol. And this is where a great runner is going to have an advantage because they're sitting there and going, wow, this is actually a really long run. But imagine when you see the Capitol for the first time, when you see that line of sight, which he's about to see, it's going to be an insurmountable amount of volume. And then panic sets in, negative thoughts set in. And once a negative thought sets in, it doesn't go away. It just turns into something worse. I got to hand it to Boz in this event. This event is a really creative event. I loved the Burden Run in 2013. Loved it. This, completely different, completely new and improved.
What's the biggest difference between the two events in your opinion, Chris?
I actually love the order. This format, it's really incredible because if the run is first, the runners really have an advantage because they're sitting there and going, I'm going to dominate this thing and I'm going to be in front. And there's something special about being in front, aware that the entire field is behind you. It's essentially, I'm in control. I'm the boss. I'm the leader. And that gives you power. And that's what every athlete out here is trying to do. I mean, we see that with Tia. One of the great things about Tia is that she has presence. When she walks into a room, you look at her and you go, there's God.
Adrian Boston doing a really nice job ahead of Travis Mayer to try to clear the way for him and keep that course as interference-free as possible.
And this is really just an experience that you can only get at the CrossFit Games with an event like this. Starting in the North Park Stadium, using implements like the Pig. And this run course is, aside from the distance, it's a beautiful course. I mean, Madison itself is such a pretty city. It's been an amazing host city for the CrossFit Games, but you have the grass fields coming out of the dog park, and then you hit the lake right before you get to that downtown portion.
Travis Mayer on the right side is in the lead. Guillaume Briand and Baden Brown are now second and third behind Mayer.
Mayer getting a little cheer from the crowd out on the course. I'd probably say it's like, hey, can I hitch a ride? Room for one more?
I love that this is on the open road. That involving the fans the community of Madison so that they can see what this is all about.
This is a really good opportunity to say on your left. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm just going to throw it out there.
Dallin Pepper and Tudor Magda are there. You can say Ellie Turner is in the background, so she is still all by herself in the lead for the women.
I got to say, Ellie Turner.
Corona's there as well.
Ellie Turner looks really good. Really good. I mean, that is a weightlifting athlete. And look how comfortable she is. I mean, we're deep into this run right now. I mean, if there was a weakness, it would be surfacing.
Tim Paulson behind Ellie Turner right now, and there's Brent Fikowski behind Paulson.
And Chris, we were talking earlier, the original burden run of 2.1, the 3.5 is like, you might be able to look good for 2 to 2.5 miles, but when you tack on that extra one, that's when the distances really become significant, when you add that extra mile, mile and a half.
That's correct. I mean, let's face it, in 2014 when they did a 3-mile run, right, triple three, it was a 3,000 meter row, 300 double unders into a 3-mile run. I made a comment back then that any CrossFit athlete could fake a mile. Any CrossFit athlete can, but you know what? You throw in 3, you're gonna see the people who put in the work. 3.5 after the pig flip. That's a lot of running.
Sayer Kaya is in the box on the left side of your screen. She sits in second behind Ellie Turner, and is Carolyn Prevost in third. Guimayeros is between the two of them.
Look at the heaviness when they land. It's almost like they're running, and they're running in sand. They're running in mud, something heavy. That's a sign that an athlete right now feels flat. They don't have that spring, that jump, that hop. And that means that that athlete, actually, their whole entire posterior chain is collapsing on them, that they can't even support the body weight. And at this point where they are, I mean, we're not even remotely close to halfway on this run. There's some challenges there.
And you think about that, it's almost the complete opposite of what you think you should be doing when you're under fatigue. It feels like, okay, I'll slow my cadence down, I'll slow that pace up, but that's more, like you said, that is more power or load in each stride you take when it's slower and longer. And really the opposite of what you want to do is shorten it up.
Yep.
Have less time under tension with every strike of your foot.
That's right. And there's always a tendency when you're fatigued. And unfortunately, kids learn this as they get older. Like kids, real young kids, beautiful running form. But somewhere along the way as they age, they think that speed is associated with length. And it's not. So one of the things you could look at when I talk about like the heaviness, especially some of the women where you can see the waistband, is that waistband when their foot is directly under their body, where they're bearing all the weight, is that waistband dropping on one side, and then when they switch legs, is it dropping on the other side? That's a sign that that athlete is collapsing under their body weight, that their glutes can't support them. And that is the first sign that fatigue is beginning to build in that individual.
Paige Powers on the left for the women. We haven't seen Alex Vigneault, who is up there with Guillaume Briand in the fight for second. So we're going to assume that Vigneault is still up there, along with Briand fighting for second place right now, behind Travis Mayer, who's on the right side of your screen, who has led since the very beginning of this event, past the 23-minute mark, and Travis Mayer is getting closer now to the capital.
Yeah, he is. So Alex Vigneault, so for the people that want to know, like, how fast are they? Alex Vigneault, he could run a 5:10 mile. He's a legit runner.
The level of which these athletes have come in the last decade, as far as the size and the speed at which they can do for mile times, is unbelievable.
It really is. I think that's where I applaud what Glassman created. He created a sport for that recreational athlete, that athlete that sits in the middle. They weren't genetically had this predisposition for amazing endurance or amazing speed, strength, and power. They sat in the middle. And then these anomaly athletes come along, like a Rich Froning. A Rich Froning could put 400 pounds over his head. But for the people that are in the running community, just so you know, Rich Froning, He's 198 pounds, and in the movement of running, his VO2 max, which is aerobic capacity, is 72 milliliters per kilogram of body weight per minute. And I want you to recognize that there are elite marathon runners that can run 2:06 that don't have that kind of aerobic capacity. And that's what this sport's about. I honestly think that the next movement that they are about to do is the core of this workout. You get through that piece, you're going to start thinking, I got this. And that's when confidence is going to build. In every workout, there is what you call a sticking point, that uh-oh moment where that workout gets real. And if you're ignoring this jerry can carry, you're making a huge mistake, because right now you are creating a substantial amount of damage on the legs, and now you're going to carry a very heavy implement. And I'm not talking about just a small distance across a football field. It's 200 meters. That is a legit distance. And so in my opinion, in this workout, you get through this run, you better be thinking about what's coming, because that sits at the core, the #1 sticking point.
And Travis Mayer on the final stretch to the Capitol. His mile 1 split was 6 minutes 10 seconds. Alex Vigneault, who is in second, is at 6:22. On the women's side, after 1 mile, Ellie Turner had a 1 minute 20-second lead over Carolyn Prevost.
The other thing too, Chris, you were talking about earlier, is an athlete that's comfortable and confident in how their shoulders are being carried. Are they relaxed? Are their arms relaxed? And if they're not, this is going to be a big problem for them if they've been under tension for 3.5 miles.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what's going to happen here. Right now, this position is going to make it more difficult to breathe. Matter of fact, the next movement is even going to be worse. Anybody that wants to try this at home, just go down into a squat, right? All the way down, balancing on your feet, curl your shoulders, and curl your back forward. And now try to take a deep breath in. You can't. So imagine being exhausted, being hypoxic, and you're trying just to fill your lungs. Unfortunately, the implements prevent that from happening.
Travis Mayer is the first man to the jerry bag carry, 100 pounds in each hand, 200 meters on the carry. He'll put those down. There's a quick transition over to the Husafeld bag, and then he will carry that 200 meters, and it ends with that ascent up the Capitol steps where we saw Nikki earlier.
I think those steps are going to be so basically appreciated of how difficult it's going to be. We actually saw Travis take 2 steps with the bag. It's the same total weight of 200 pounds. It's 100 in each hand, but he could barely make it up the 2 steps. And the one thing these athletes are going to need to be careful of is with this position of the jug carry is that it's pulling on the traps and the top of the shoulders, but also completely decimating their grip, which are the 2 key things you need to stabilize that bear hug carry of the Husafeld bag.
Travis Mayer got his run done unofficially in 23 minutes and 26 seconds.
I mean, that's incredible.
Here come Baden Brown and Alex Vigneault. They'll be the next 2 men to grab the jerry cans. It's Brown just ahead of Vigneault now.
This is about the 3rd break for Mayer. About a 1:50 lead on these 2 athletes, but his first walk was a very, very far distance. I talked to some coaches earlier about what the plan is, and there was a mixed bag of plans. It's a short breaks, quick steps, or, I mean, if you have the capacity, carry it as much as you can, as far as you can. But again, this is going to have a compounding effect on the final piece of this event.
Travis Mayer had about a 2-minute lead on Vigneault and Brown.
Wow. Man, he looks good.
Look at Vigneault. Look at Vigneault. That is impressive.
Travis Mayer asking for some help from the crowd, and there's a good crowd out there at the Capitol building.
So that's a slight downhill where he's running, Travis Mayer. And so that's why he's got some good speed there. He's shaking out his arms. He knows what's about to come. And Chase, I agree with you. That grip is now smoked. I mean, rock climbers, mountain climbers, when they create that pump in the arms, unfortunately, that pump prevents good blood circulation, which makes that fatigue even worse.
Travis Mayer moving to the Husafell bag, and then it's 200 meters to carry that bag that weighs 200 pounds. And remember, he's got to go up those steps, too.
I mean, he's respecting that bag. He knows.
So he can carry it any way he wants until he gets to the stairs. And this is, every athlete watching, you're going to need to do something like this to save your arms, because it's easier. This is a moment where he can catch his breath a little bit. You can't really outrace someone on the straightaway. But when you get to the steps, all bets are off. And everyone we talked to about demoing it said the steps were something they were not prepared for when they had got there.
Took Travis Mayer just under 3 minutes to get that carry done, and then another 40 seconds to run from the jerry can to the Husafell bag. Ellie Turner, meanwhile, is on to the jerry can carry.
Look at her cadence compared to the boys that came through. That cadence, that Ellie Turner knows what she's doing. Look at that. Short steps, high step frequency.
Ellie Turner coming in 24th place overall. Her best finish was in the overhead portion of event number 2. She took 16th overall in that.
So I'm not sure if many know about Ellie Turner, but she has been training with Justin Medeiros since she's qualified for the CrossFit Games every day. So she's got some knowledge in her head.
Now, Mayer in that position, that's not a resting position for the upper body. You may be able to breathe freely with it on your back instead of maybe on your shoulder, but the fingertip grip there, right? The pump that we've already gotten from the jerry can carry. And this is when it gets real, because you may be ahead by 50 seconds, but these steps are going to really take a lot of energy.
Look at that crowd. I mean, you would think this is the Tour de France. Look at that. It's 20 people deep.
Here comes Travis Mayer up the steps, and this is where, as you mentioned, Chase, he has to bear hug that thing, and this is what you were alluding to earlier, Chris. It is so hard to breathe when you're in that position with 200 pounds pressing up against your chest.
Look at the hands. Look at the fingers. They're slowly separating and spreading apart. And one thing is having the grip, right? The other thing is really having the arm length. The longer arm athletes here are going to be at a slight advantage because they can interlock those fingers. But if your forearms are blasted, if your grip is gone, it's going to be much, much more difficult. Because you see him, he'll start hands crossed. He's grabbing wrists. Right? You get the side of the wrist, and this is almost like slowly cutting a rope with a knife, right? Just one strand, one strand, one strand.
You see Brown and Vigno in the background there as Travis Mayer has one flight of stairs left. And Travis Mayer is going to take the opening heat for the men as he comes across, ditches the bag, and Travis Mayer in 32 minutes, 16.22 seconds.
What I really like for Travis is that on his first carry, his hands were a bit smoked walking the bag to the steps, but he got a much better grip on the second one with that wrist grab as opposed to interlocking the fingers. And that was able, or that made it able for him to carry it all the way up to the final stretch.
Took a little more than 3 minutes for Travis Mayer to complete that carry. Here comes Ellie Turner. Behind her is Brent Fikowski.
Brent Fikowski finding himself yet another runoff against one of the female competitors to the finish of an endurance event.
Cannot get away from it. Tim Paulson, you saw him. He has the Husafell bag on his shoulder. Ellie Turner, one of the rising stars out of Australia.
It's clear that every one of these athletes watched the Burden Run from 2013 and how did Jason Khalipa carry that log. And this way is how he did it.
Here comes Alex Vigno ahead of Baden Brown.
I mean, 200 pounds, it's like you're carrying your buddy drunk after the bars up the stairs. I mean, it's just like a lifeless body. And that is so unbelievably heavy that these athletes are making so incredibly light.
Ellie Turner has the bag down. She had a pretty good lead over Sayre Kaya, who's now in second place. And here comes Vigno to lock up second place for the men in heat number 1. And Vigno is across. 33 minutes, 53.84 seconds. Baden Brown will be the next man to finish as Ellie Turner looks to set the time to beat for the women. Well, Sayer Kaya is gaining on her.
Yeah, Ellie actually had to take a break with the walk. She hadn't even gotten to the stairs yet.
Baden Brown up the final flight of stairs as Sayer Kaya and Ellie Turner are fighting for first place for the women. Now Brown is in 34 minutes, 27.50 seconds. So Turner still has a decent-sized lead over Kaya, but she does not have a lot of time to take another sizable break.
And that's exactly right, Sean, is that these breaks you're going to take here at the end is going to be the deciding factor. You could have a minute lead on the person behind you and lose that entirely on a break on this Husafell bag carry.
Alexander Caron lugging that Husafell bag up the stairs. Behind him is Guillaume Briand, who has his hands on his knees. Now here comes Brent Fikowski. He's going to take a break as well. So Sayer Kaya has now passed Ellie Turner. Here comes Tudor Magda. It's neck and neck for Turner and Kaya as they approach the steps. And that's when they'll have to transition to the bear hug. Alexander Caron on the right side of the screen, looking to get across the finish line and take fourth in heat number one. Caron is in 35 minutes, 27.43 seconds. And this is what happened just a little bit ago. Sayer Kaya passing Ellie Turner while Turner was taking a break on that Husafell bag.
And the one thing we're not even talking about is that you're taking breaks, but it's not a break because you have to pick the bag back up. 200-pound half sandbag clean, 150-pound half sandbag clean. Ooh.
Wow,
that was smart.
Sayer Kaya,
that was very smart.
Resting it on the edge of that planter as Turner is back in front now.
Not sure if it's legal, but I would try until someone tells me not to. That was very, very clever.
Tudor Magda is hoisting that bag back up and having trouble with it.
I call it, it's what I do when I drive, Sean. If there's a sign that doesn't say I can't, it means I can.
Here comes Sayer Kaya behind Ellie Turner. Turner has herself situated with that Husafell bag and up the second flight of stairs. Kaya's gaining ground, but her grip is faltering.
And that's one thing is the grip. What did she do on the jerry can just to make up that ground before her and Turner? And the other thing is really just anthropometrics. The length of these athletes' arms. See, Kaya puts it again on the side step.
And here comes the judge. It's going to say, yeah, I don't think that's going to be allowed.
It's like, oh, sorry, I didn't know. There wasn't a sign. I said no parking. But the big thing here is like the ability to interlock your fingers around this bag. It just cannot be stated enough how advantageous this is. And most of the women, the bags aren't really a different size than the men. They're just a little bit lighter. So if they don't have the arm length to get around, this is a much more difficult movement for the women than it is the men, just for the fact that they can't interlock their fingers around the bag.
Sayer Kaya has the bag up again. Ellie Turner has it resting on the stairs. Tudor Magda is in the back there. He's been laboring with that thing. Now here comes Carolyn Prevost on the left side of your screen. Austin Spencer making his way up the stairs.
And just look at hand position on the bag. The bag is shaped that it gets wider at the top. Now that also means it's heavier at the top. But for these athletes, somehow you're going to have to find a way to get it a little bit higher in the lap and grab lower than comfortable and lean back. You're almost going to have to lean back and lay the heavier weight on your chest just to get a better grip. So there's a little give and take here, but if you can't hold on to the bag, it's your only option once the arms go.
Here comes Ellie Turner just trying to finish the final few steps and has the bag down again, and that Husafell bag is modeled to mimic the shape of the famous Husafell stone in Iceland. You often see that stone used in strongman competitions.
And what you're looking at is, they have two strengths with the Husafell bag, half strong and full strong. If you can get it to the lap and walk, you're half strong. If you can go unbroken the whole way, you're full strong.
And here comes Moritz Fiebig on the right side of your screen as Ellie Turner's so close to the finish. Austin Spencer is going to come across after
And there's just
Moritz Fiebig.
And there's just nothing left in the arms for Ellie Turner. She
Cole Grieshaber's in.
Wow.
And this is where he said, anything can happen on the stairs.
Wow.
Anything can happen. You had a huge lead on the run.
And here comes Kaya, and Kaya's going to put on a charge at the end, and she's going to beat Ellie Turner across the finish. What a performance from Kaya late in that heat to take the heat win. Ellie Turner will take second. 39:17.62 for Kaya Turner, 39:28.34.
I thought Boz was smiling after the skills event that Nick Matthew could actually do the crisscross unders. There may be a bigger one for Boz after seeing the finish here on the stairs, which is really exactly what he wanted to see.
Carolyn Prevost and Danny Spiegel coming across. That is a great result for Danny Spiegel.
Yes, it is, and it comes down, like we said, it is a run-heavy event, but if you don't have your boxes checked on the odd object strongman implements, you can lose minutes here.
One more look at just how close the finish was between Kaya and Turner. Kaya was able to hang on to that thing after she got up that final flight of steps. That was the difference, and Sayre Kaya wins heat number 1. And that is the reaction that we expected to see after this event. That's Karen Freyova now who's across the finish line.
They're destroyed. Destroyed.
The 5 women have finished. For the men,
I like what Zanoni has done with his bag, is get it vertical to try to get his arms underneath it, but you got to get him under to start before we can get the bag up to the waist and hopefully slide those hands under just a little bit.
But I mean, look at the wreckage on these steps.
here comes Sydney Mikulishin as 13 men have come across the finish line. Mikulishin is in. Alex Gazan coming across the finish as well. Sola Seguridadder is in for the women. With Travis Mayer for the men, who had the fastest time at 32:16.22 seconds. And Sayre Kaya at the last second, passing Ellie Turner for the win for the women with a time of 39 minutes, 17.62 seconds.
When you see a finish like that between Turner and Kaya, a lot of times you can allude it to, say, a handstand walk to the finish, when there's elements of unbroken distances, and say you fail and you have to come back, and the panic of knowing you have to rest and recover and feeling the pack start to catch you. The same thing here on the back carry. If you're at a point of failure and fatigue, you're going to have to try to sit there and wait longer than you want to because of the race around you. You can pick up a bag too soon and it have disastrous effects for you on the back half.
And that's what fatigue does. Fatigue actually messes with your mental acuity, your strategic thinking. You think you're making sound choices, but your fatigue gets in the way. And that's why athletes make bad mistakes under fatigue. They're just not in the right frame of mind.
And I think they're so used to using like barbells, kettlebells, and dumbbells where it's like, if it's towards the ends, I'm getting tired, I can still gut it out. I can still outrace someone if I have the desire to, not with failure movements. And a back carry is one of those failure movements, like handstand walks, handstand push-ups, even ring muscle-ups to a certain extent.
That's correct. I mean, once the wheels fall off, you're just trying to wrap your head around it and going, what am I doing wrong? How do I fix this problem? Unfortunately, the damage has created this level of misjudgment.
Colton Mertens is making his way across the finish line. We've seen Tudor Magda, Guy Majeros, and Andre Uday, Georgios Karavis, and now Mertens finish for the men. And for the women, Freya Moosbrugger finished after Alex Gazan. Michelle Morand and Victoria Campos coming in. as we are getting set for the start